So,
No trouble.
oh,
Well, Mike, thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
so my name is Mike Radov. I live in the Baltimore area. I'm uh, work in technology. I do automation, and I've always been interested in space for my entire life. Ever since I've been a kid, I've had, you know, photos from from the Hubble and now James Webb on my wall. Saturn has always been my favorite planet. And for me, looking up has always been a way to sort of dream and imagine that, whatever problems we're having here, that when humanity expands to the stars, we'll have the opportunity to put our differences aside and make life better for everybody. I mean,
Do you remember what your first space memory was?
My first memory was, this is gonna really date me, but the Schumacher Levy. I don't remember when that was. I think that was like the mid-90s. That was one of the first memories that I have of like mid-90s TVs and like watching the astronomers like check on the impacts from the comet on Jupiter. That's one of the earliest memories that I have, probably. I clearly remember that one. So it's one of the early ones that I have.
Yeah, that's a big wake-up call. Comets do hit planets.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you found out about the Levy-Shoemaker comet?
I think it was the news that was going on, and I was always interested in space and astronomy. I had pictures of Saturn on my wall. So I was like, looking at different news sources at the time and just seeing, like, casually paying attention to what's going on. And this is this big event that I think was like almost on all the front pages of everything. So it just caught my attention. It's like, this is really cool. This is really amazing.
Okay, what is your most recent space thing that you think about? Like something from your daily life now?
Great question. So I have been able to take out my telescope and look at the moon and Jupiter and some of the other planets. So that's been something that I've really been doing recently. I moved recently, so I hadn't had the chance to do that. But with the whole James Webb Space Telescope and taking the photos, which has been really amazing to see some of those photos, it's inspired me to take out my telescope again. So that's what's been on top of mind for me recently.
Have you had any issues with satellites interfering with your observations?
I have had some instances where I've had airplanes and satellites go in the middle of what I've been observing. And that's always a problem because it's like, oh man, I want to look at the moon. Why is a plane in the middle of it? It might make for a cool photo, but like it always interrupts me. I always feel like my train of focus is thrown off whenever that happens. So, I mean, it'd be nice if they could find a balance between the satellites and observation.
What do you think that balance looks like?
Well, I think that there are certain services like Starlink that you need, that are definitely valuable to have for low income areas where maybe to provide cheaper internet service. I'm not saying Starlink does that, but I'm saying it's an internet constellation type service for places like Ukraine or rural America that might have only one internet provider, and this might provide a cheaper alternative for equally as fast, or other places in the world where internet service isn't as available. But that doesn't take precedence over science. My fear is that somehow we're going to miss a discovery because we have these thousands of satellites that are reflecting light and disrupting the observations. So I think that that balance comes along the line of something where, okay, these satellites are valuable, but once they just are up there to be up there, like, no, that's like not what value you're providing by having 100 satellites that do nothing. I mean, like and also for those satellites that are there, they need to take steps to really minimize the effect they're having on observation. So that means reducing light pollution, by the glint off the sun or making them only as big as they need to be are steps they need to take. And I know there isn't a way to really, there is no overarching way to enforce that or enforcement body, but whoever is doing this needs to have that sense of enforcement to be able to do it. I'm not sure that's the right word, but they need to band together and be like, this is for the common good. Because if the people start thinking, oh man, this is disrupting our astronomy, they're just going to say, I hate all of them, and everybody's going to lose. So
it's true. So I guess, are you tracking NASA's plans to send astronauts back to the moon?
I have been tracking some of it. I've not been following each and every step. I know that they have the SLS recently they've tried to launch, and that they have had some fuel leak issues and tried to fix it, and it hasn't necessarily gone as NASA wants. But I definitely could do better in terms of tracking it. But I'm aware that they're trying to get back to the moon 2024.
And when did you find out about that?
I think it was like when the previous president, it really came when he made a big deal out of returning to the moon before 2024. He made a big deal out of it. I might have been like, okay, it was like, okay, maybe on my radar, like, okay, like I was maybe aware of it, but I was like, okay, this cool fact, NASA's going to go back. But I was like, when the previous president was like, no, we're going to go back by 2024, and the vice president started the Space Council again, that's when I was like, okay, they're serious about this. They're actually going to move this forward. So.
Most of the people I talk to, like at Starbucks or at the airport or at the shopping malls, they don't know that we're planning to send people back to the moon. I was wondering if that jives with your experience or if that surprises you.
It doesn't surprise me. I wasn't fully aware that they were going to be sending people back so soon. I thought it was going to be more or less like the ISS type situation where, you know, we show that we can have the technology and then we do some international partnership where we build an ISS type system around the moon for space experiments or something. I wasn't aware that they're planning on landing people there. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I started this project, the plan was to have people on the moon in 2024, which is why I'm like counting down to the end of 2024. But now it's kind of slipped to 2025. So that's kind of a bummer, but not unexpected. But what do you think about us going back to the moon?
I think that in an age of hyper-partisan politics and an age where everything is so biased, I mean, like, you turn on the news and you turn it to station A and they're going to present the same piece of news about something as simple as an executive action or something. They're going to spin it one way. And you turn to channel B, they spin it a completely different way, right? I feel like the moon is something where no matter who you are, or where you live, or what your beliefs are, when you look up at the full moon, it's a shared experience. You know, like people for thousands of years have been looking up at the moon and have been inspired by it. So I'm hoping that it becomes an opportunity for us to come together and realize that, you know, even if I think A and you think B and somebody else thinks C, you know, they're not evil. There's another person, you know, like I'm hoping that we can all come together and it inspires everybody. And by us going back to the moon, it also drives the technology to help improve Earth. You know, a lot of the technology that we take for granted, like Velcro, and some of the other technologies that we have around us are from the space program. I think there's a stat that's like for every $1 invested in the 60 space program, you got like $10 or $12 back in some other form of products and economic value. I sort of see no reason not to go back. You know, whether it's for the economic value, you know, it'll help us come up with ways to save water, or, you know, potentially grow food or save lives on Earth, but also the social changes, like people around the world to look up and be like, oh yeah, there's people on the moon. It's not just Bob Smith, but it's a wide variety of people that are there. and provide the opportunity for people to come together in an age where sometimes people are more divided. So
when you think about the future of humanity, like 100, 200 years from now, do you see humans still like primarily on the Earth making these short trips to places like the moon and to low Earth orbit, or do you think we've actually been able to expand humanity to the point that people are living on the moon and on Mars and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn and like what does humanity 200 years from now look like to you?
great question. So I'll joke and say hopefully there's humanity in 200 years. I sort of see humanity. I see humanity making jumps, and I could see us like living on the moon and having Mars, like having people starting to send people to Mars. I don't know if we will go beyond Mars, just because the time that it takes and sort of some of the progress that we made has been a little slow, if you know what I mean. Sorry. This progress has been a little bit slow as compared to those plans to go back to Mars to go to Mars in the 70s. Then that got cut. And it seems like, oh man, we might be restarting everything. And the progress hasn't, and we're just getting to the point where we're about to go back to the moon. And that's, as you know, there's been some delays there and cost overruns. So my concern being is that if the government if the government can push us forward, we'll be able to do it. But in 200 years, I definitely see us on the moon and making low Earth orbit trips for like schools and stuff. I could easily see a space elevator as part of your 5th grade class. I could see everybody going up to, see an overview of the Earth and being like, here's the Earth, here's how important it is to protect the planet. You're just one, borders don't mean anything. Just be nice to everybody. I could definitely see that. And that's where I think humanity, if we can get along, is going.
Now, as some people are concerned about having settlers on Mars and disturbing potentially proof of life on another planet and other scientific discoveries, I was wondering what you think about that.
Great question. So I think that that's a concern for going anywhere. Like for example, going to Venus, there's also that concern about whatever life is there. I think that wherever we go, as we as in humanity we need to understand what was there before we go there. Humans tend to have a tendency to be very disruptive wherever we go, and I think that's a serious problem. I don't want future humans to disrupt the Martian evolution in a way that's bad, and I think that there's a lot to learn there from whatever is already there. If Mars is found to be sterile and no life, that's one thing, but until we make that determination, I think it's worth checking out and investigating before we take any disruptive action more than we already have.
Of course, there's some people that say that, if we had humans living on Mars, we'd be able to discover more because we'd be actually there and able to explore.
Yeah, I'd argue that, the way to do that might be through human settlers, but I'm not sure that having them on the surface would be the best idea, considering that, humans unfortunately always leave trash, and we're not the greatest at cleaning up our own trash, as we see on Earth, landfills everywhere and everything. So I'm not saying I'm pessimistic. I'm just thinking that however we do it, it should be done in a way that doesn't disrupt the environment there. So.
Have you ever heard the expression "one person's trash is another person's treasure"?
Yes, but it's been a while.
But what does that expression mean to you?
To me, it means like, for example, if I, let's say, throw away a book I just read, or get rid of a book I just read, that's my trash. But to somebody who hasn't read it yet and is interested in that subject or that author, that's really amazing. That's gold for them. So it's the idea that the trash for one person is not just trash. it has value elsewhere. That's what it means to me.
How could we turn our trash into treasure for something?
Great question. So I think that a lot of that would be reusing it. So reusing what we already have thrown away and starting to implement more solutions that implement items that can be reused. So what I mean by reusing is not just strictly like melting down metals that we throw away, but it's also using plastic for straws, using plastic for forks, and reusing it to provide other benefits to humans and to other animals as well. So that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I see those landfills too. Whenever I'm driving around Houston, there's like maybe 4 or 5 of them I drive by, and they're like artificial hills. And at some time they're going to be artificial mountains, and Houston's just going to be in this middle of this huge crater. It's going to be like Mexico City, you know. I mean, Mexico City is a natural crater. I just mean that that we're transforming the landscape so that we're recreating our own crater walls. Yeah. So would you take a trip to space if you could?
Yes, I would. I have heard that the overview effect, where you look at the Earth from a different angle, really changes people. And the ability to change how I look at the Earth is always something that I would really like to do. It's something that I would find interesting and really, I think, have a profound impact on how I view the world.
If SpaceX is able to get Starship working, and we have literally millions of people traveling suborbitally between places on the Earth each year, kind of seeing the Earth from above, do you think that's going to, and what effect do you think that's going to have on society?
I think that it will definitely, I think there's going to definitely be the business effect, or like the business/travel effect, where like, it's monetary, where like, Bob can go from London to New York in 2 hours and have the business meeting and then get back to London in the same amount of time it would have taken him to fly from London to New York in the 6 hours. That's one. And then also the leisure travelers to able to spend more time at their destinations. But I want to focus on the effect it will have on people. Like when people fly, it helps bring people together in the sense of like, okay, you all have to stand in TSA, you all have to do the same things. I think that for some of that stuff, it will have the opportunity to have people come together and chat and make new friends, as well as to help people who are on those flights see the Earth differently. If they can bring it down to a cost where most people can afford it, they'll see Earth from a different angle. But they'll never see anything. It might change their perspective. So.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay, so imagine 200 years in the future, there's a high schooler that's in history class doing a project about the 2020s. What do you think would be worth remembering about this decade in 200 years? And it could be even things that you hope happen in the next 8. So kind of take the question however you want.
Yeah, so I think that they're going to remember 3 things. One of them is, I think, a lot of the social, I don't want to call it social turmoil or unrest, but I think a lot of the social aspects, like whether it be the former US president or some of what's happening with like in Brazil or some of those other people, you're sort of seeing the return of, or turn away from globalism in a sense. So that might be one aspect, and I'm going to turn away from that. You're going to start to see climate change. I think a lot of people are starting to really turn the corner on climate change, where you're starting to see countries make the pledge to become neutral by 2050 or 2040, 2035. So you'll start to see that those changes start to come into effect now, and really turn the corner. As well as I think that you'll start to see the return of, or the growth of space, whether it be space travel or return to the moon or more. This is really where it's going to get started, where it's not just going to be return to the moon because a president said something, or we're going to try to beat the Russians. No, we're going to return to the moon to do some real science and stay there and really make it a cooperative place for everybody to be. And that's really going to hopefully transform the entire planet and make everything better.
I hope that happens, and that definitely will be worth remembering if it does. Well, Mike, thank you so much for participating in my project. Those are the questions I had. Is there any questions you had for me or anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, I think this is a really great project. I think you've done a really good job with this, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.